I overheard my future mother-in-law laughing with her friends about how she secured a SIMP son-in-law and is set for life. I made sure she understood that she won't be able to take advantage of me. I, 32-year-old Mark, am getting married to my fiancée Jessica, 31, in a month. We have been together for 2 years, and I proposed just last month. I am absolutely crazy about this woman, and I cannot wait to spend my life with her. Jessica and I come from completely different worlds. I grew up in a blue-collar family, right in the middle of 2 siblings. We were always getting by one paycheck at a time, scraping together what we could to make ends meet. Jessica, on the other hand, never had to worry about a single thing. Her father was a big-shot businessman who made sure she never went without. She grew up with kids who spent their summers on private islands and threw parties that cost more than my childhood home. I worked my way through college, busting my ass to land a respectable job at a top company. My parents were beyond proud of the life I had built, knowing I had never needed to rely on their money to get ahead. Jessica and I first met at a party thrown by a mutual friend. Even though we were from 2 different worlds, the connection was instant. We started dating, spending time getting to know one another, and with every passing day, I fell deeper for her. Once things got serious, Jessica invited me over to meet her parents. That was the night I first met Richard, her father, a man who had built an empire from the ground up. And then there was Linda, her mother, a woman who had never worked a day in her life and saw herself as some kind of high society queen. Richard seemed to respect my hard work, but Linda, she took one look at me and decided I was beneath her daughter. It was not even subtle. She barely tried to hide her distaste. Every time I spoke, she would cut me off or roll her eyes, making it painfully obvious she believed her daughter could do better. Meanwhile, my folks welcomed Jessica like she was their own. My brothers instantly took a liking to her, cracking jokes and teasing her in the way that only family can. They would tell her she still had time to back out before marrying a guy like me, always laughing and keeping things lighthearted. It meant the world to me that they embraced her so fully. Even though Linda made it clear she did not approve of me, I still made an effort. I figured it would take time for her to come around. Maybe if she got to know me better, she would see how much I loved her daughter. But no matter what I did, that cold disapproval never faded. Despite Linda's attitude, Jessica and I focused on our future. We built a life filled with love, trust, and shared dreams. We held on to the hope that eventually Linda would accept me, but honestly, it did not seem likely. Then, a year ago, Richard suddenly passed away from a heart attack. While he had left behind a sizable fortune, there were also unexpected debts. The bank came knocking, and Linda was forced to sell her house and luxury car to cover it all. That is how she ended up moving in with us 6 months ago. She had nowhere else to go, and I was not about to let Jessica's mother be homeless, no matter how I felt about her. I did my best to make her comfortable, giving her space and trying to be kind. But Linda, she had something negative to say about everything. For context, Jessica and I have always split responsibilities around the house. We both have demanding careers, so we take turns cooking, cleaning, and handling chores. My parents raised me to be independent. I have no problem doing my share of the housework. Linda despised it. She would make snide remarks whenever she saw me cooking or washing dishes, throwing out lines like, "A real man does not belong in the kitchen." At first I ignored her, but over time, her jabs became more cruel. Jessica was just as frustrated as I was. We talked about it more than once, and she fully agreed that her mother's behavior was out of line. Then came the night of the party. I had just gotten promoted at work, and I wanted to celebrate with the people closest to me. We decided to throw a big gathering, inviting our family and friends. Linda, never one to miss an opportunity to mingle with the rich, took it upon herself to invite some of her wealthy socialite friends. I am not the kind of guy who shows off, so I left all the planning to Jessica. She went all out, making sure everything looked incredible. By the time guests started arriving, the house was full of laughter, conversation, and celebration. Linda at first seemed to be having a great time catching up with her old friends. Jessica and I were busy entertaining our guests, making sure everyone was comfortable. That is when I noticed something off about Linda. She had a few too many drinks, and her comments were becoming more and more inappropriate. She was boasting about how luxurious everything at the party was: the decorations, the catering, the drinks all, while making it sound like she had played some role in it. Some of our guests were visibly uncomfortable, exchanging glances. Jessica and I did our best to stay composed, knowing Linda had been drinking since earlier in the day. At one point we ran out of wine, so I made a quick run to the liquor store. When I returned, I found Jessica outside on the lawn chatting with some of our family members. I dropped off the wine, then headed back inside to check on things. That is when I heard it. Linda was laughing loudly with her friends, her voice carrying through the house. I was about to walk in when I caught part of the conversation. She was talking about my recent promotion, making jokes about how she had been living in my house for months without paying a centall because I was, in her words, too gullible to realize I was being used. She laughed as she called me a pushover and bragged that I had been covering all her expenses while she lived in my home rent-free. Her friends cackled alongside her. Then she went on to say that now that Jessica was set to marry me, her life was practically secured. Mark comes from nothing, she joked. He is going to work himself into the ground trying to keep us comfortable. I had nothing to worry about. I stood there, gripping the doorway, trying to contain the rage boiling inside me. I could not listen to another word. I grabbed a bottle of wine and walked straight into the room. The second they noticed me, the laughter stopped. Linda's face shifted from amusement to unease. She knew I had heard everything. I set the wine down, poured a drink for everyone, and locked eyes with her. "Linda," I said, my voice steady. "I could not help but overhear your conversation. I stood there for a good 5 minutes listening to you talk about how you have been taking advantage of me. I have welcomed you into my home, tried to make sure you were comfortable during an incredibly difficult time, and yet this is how you talk about me? In front of your friends? Laughing at my expense?" Silence. Tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Linda sat there, stunned, while her friends awkwardly glanced around, suddenly uninterested in the conversation. And that was when I decided I was done being disrespected in my own home. The air in the room felt thick, the silence weighing heavy as everyone took in what had just happened. I could see that Linda was completely thrown off by how direct I had been, and her friends, the same ones who had been laughing just moments before, now looked like they wanted to be anywhere but here. Right when the tension was at its peak, Jessica walked in. She took one look around the room, her brows furrowed, confusion all over her face. She glanced at me, then at her mother, trying to piece together what she had just walked into. I turned to her, my voice steady but firm. "Jessica, you need to hear what your mother has been saying about me." I laid it all out, word for word. The jokes, the insults, the way she had bragged about living in my house without paying a dime, acting as if she had outsmarted me instead of being welcomed into my home when she had nowhere else to go. Jessica's eyes went wide, her face draining of color as she turned to Linda. "Mom, is this true?" Linda, for the first time, looked completely lost. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. That flicker of embarrassment on her face told me everything. She knew she had messed up. I had reached my limit. "I want you out of my house. Now." Linda's head snapped up, and suddenly she found her voice. "You cannot be serious. Where am I supposed to go?" I folded my arms. "I do not care. Maybe one of your rich friends can put you up since they were all having such a great time laughing at my expense." She turned to Jessica, panic creeping into her expression. "Sweetheart, you are going to let him do this to me?" Jessica hesitated, but the hurt in her eyes was clear. "Mom, you have put us in a horrible position tonight. We have done nothing but try to help you, and this is how you repay us?" Linda tried to backpedal, stammering something about how she was just joking, that it was all being blown out of proportion, but I was done. I gave her one last look and said, "Get out." The party fizzled out not long after that. Linda, with nowhere else to go, packed her bags and left to stay with some relative. I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion wash over me. But, of course, that was not the end of it. Update 1. After I posted last time, a lot of people told me this whole situation should be a wake-up call to what I was really marrying into. I had been so focused on Jessica and me that I had not even considered what being tied to her family might mean for my future. One piece of advice that came up over and over: get a prenuptial agreement. Honestly, it had not even crossed my mind before, but after everything that happened, I could not shake the feeling that I needed to protect myself. Jessica and I sat down the day after the party and had a serious talk. She assured me she was completely on my side, but even she could not deny that her mother's behavior had shaken things up. It was not her fault, but this whole mess made me start looking at things differently. Then, 2 days after Linda left, Jessica got a call from her mother. She ignored it, so Linda decided to text me instead. It read, "Mark, I hope you are happy now. You have driven a wedge between me and my daughter just like I knew you would. I have already lost my husband, and now Because of you, I am losing my only child. Yes, I used you, but is that not what a son-in-law is supposed to do? Take care of his wife's mother? You could have bought me my own place when I lost mine, but instead, you forced me to live under your roof. You have more than enough to take care of Jessica, so why would it hurt you to take care of me too? Reading that message made my blood boil. Not only was she doubling down on what she had done, but she genuinely believed I owed her something. I showed it to Jessica, who looked completely disgusted. Block her, she told me, and I did. I was done. But apparently Linda was not. Update 2. A few days after I blocked her, Linda kept trying to reach Jessica. The messages started out with guilt trips, then turned into outright pleading, then swung back to anger again. Jessica told her in no uncertain terms that she had crossed a line, that we were willing to help her, but what she did at the party was completely unacceptable. She offered to help her mother find a place to stay, but made it clear that she would not be moving back in with us. Linda did not take it well. She blamed me, of course, said I was tearing her family apart, that I was making Jessica choose between me and her own mother. Honestly, I stopped caring. Meanwhile, Jessica and I continued planning our wedding, but the whole situation had left a bad taste in my mouth. One night, I finally told Jessica, I know this is not your fault, but I need to protect myself. I think we should get a prenuptial agreement. To my surprise, she nodded immediately. I understand. If it will help you feel more comfortable, I am fine with it. I was caught off guard by how easily she agreed, but honestly, it only made me respect her more. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could finally breathe again. Then, just when things were starting to settle down, Linda showed up at our front door. I was home alone when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door and there she was, standing there like nothing had happened. Before I could even say a word, she pushed past me and walked into the house. You have ruined everything, she snapped. You have poisoned my daughter against me. You think you can just cut me out of my own family? I clenched my jaw, keeping my voice calm. Linda, you need to leave. I am not going anywhere, she yelled. This is my daughter's house too. If she is living here, so am I. I had dealt with enough of her drama, and I was not going to entertain it anymore. Linda, you lost that privilege when you decided to humiliate me in front of my own guests. I am not going to argue with you. Either you leave now or I will call the police. At that moment, Jessica walked through the front door, bags of groceries in her arms. She stopped in her tracks, her eyes darting between us. What is going on? Linda turned to her, desperate. Jessica, tell him. Tell him I belong here. Jessica sighed and set the bags down. She looked tired, like she had already made peace with what she had to say. Mom, you cannot just show up here unannounced. And after everything that happened, how can you expect Mark to just forget? Linda's face twisted in anger. So, that is it? You are choosing him over me? Jessica straightened her shoulders. No, Mom. I am choosing us. I am choosing the life I want with the man I love. And if you cannot respect that, then I do not know what else to tell you. Linda looked stunned, her face burning red. I could see it, the realization hitting her that for the first time, Jessica was not going to bend to her will. And with that, Linda turned on her heel and stormed out the door. Update 3. 4 months later. It has been a few months since I last posted, and I am happy to say that Jessica and I are now married. The wedding was beautiful, and even though we did invite Linda, she refused to come. It hurt Jessica, but at the end of the day, we were surrounded by the people who truly supported us, and that was all that mattered. Married life has been great, and most importantly, peaceful. Linda has barely been a presence in our lives since that day, and honestly, I think we are both better off because of it. Our wedding day was perfect, a celebration of love, commitment, and the journey Jessica and I had embarked on together. We were surrounded by the people who truly cared about us, and every moment felt special. Laughter, joy, and warmth filled the air, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. Looking back at everything that had happened, I had moments of doubt. There were times when I wondered if I was making a mistake, if the baggage from Jessica's family would be too much to carry into a marriage. But after taking time to reflect, I realized something important. Jessica was not her mother. She had stood by my side through all of it, proving time and time again that she was committed to us above everything else. Before we got married, we sat down and had one last honest conversation about everything, including the prenuptial agreement. Jessica had no hesitation in signing it, understanding that it was about protecting both of us, giving me peace of mind, and ensuring our marriage was built on trust and mutual respect. One noticeable absence that day was Linda, my mother-in-law. We had extended an invitation despite everything because I did not want Jessica to regret not having her only remaining parent present on one of the most important days of her life. But Linda did not show up. Her resentment over what had happened still burned, and rather than putting it aside to be there for her daughter, she chose her pride instead. Jessica did not let it ruin her day, but I knew it hurt. As much as she had distanced herself from her mother's actions, it was still painful to realize that her mother would rather hold onto a grudge than celebrate with her. Even with that shadow hanging over us, our wedding was a day full of love. And as we stepped into married life, I felt hopeful for the future, knowing that the life Jessica and I had built together was strong enough to withstand anything. Update 4: Married life and personal growth. Married life has been nothing short of amazing. Jessica and I have been settling into our rhythm as husband and wife, enjoying every little moment together. The simple things, lazy Sundays in bed, cooking dinner side by side, reading quietly in the evenings, those are the things that have made our bond even stronger. With time, I have also taken steps toward personal growth. After reading through the advice and support I received, I decided to start therapy. I never realized how much of a weight I had been carrying until I started unpacking everything: the stress of being judged, the lingering resentment toward Linda, the emotional toll of constantly trying to prove my worth to someone who refused to see it. Therapy has helped me process it all in a way I did not think was possible. It has also strengthened my communication with Jessica. We have always been good together, but therapy gave me the tools to express my feelings more openly, to navigate challenges in a way that brings us even closer rather than creating distance. After a while, when I felt like I was in the right headspace, we decided to reach out to Linda. As much as I had written her off in my mind, I knew how much Jessica still cared. No matter what had happened, Linda was still her mother, and I did not want to be the reason they stayed estranged. Jessica reached out first, inviting her to dinner so we could all talk. Linda was hesitant, probably surprised that we were even making the effort, but she agreed. The evening started off tense. Linda was guarded, unsure of how to navigate the situation, and honestly, so was I. But then Jessica broke the ice, laying everything out. She told Linda how much she wanted a better relationship, how she loved both of us and did not want to live with the tension that had built up between us. Linda, for the first time, let her guard down. She admitted that, after losing her husband, she had acted out of fear and desperation, lashing out in ways she now regretted. She told me she had let her grief and pride cloud her judgment, and for the first time, she apologized not just in passing, but genuinely. Hearing those words, seeing the sincerity behind them, I felt some of that resentment I had been holding on to start to ease. We talked, really talked, about the pain, the misunderstandings, and where we could go from here. The wounds were still there, but that night we started the process of healing. Since then, things have improved. Linda is still part of our lives, and while I will never feel comfortable enough for her to live with us again, I can now be in the same room as her without feeling that weight in my chest. We see her at family gatherings, and there is no longer that undercurrent of hostility. I do not expect things to ever be perfect, but at least now there is an effort being made on both sides, and that is enough for me.